Today we are going to finish up our Manifest Destiny. You've seen the painting many times before. We are moving west across the continent from east coast to west coast, from sea to shining sea. We're interested in adding all the territory east to west across the United States. And today we will finish that process. We've talked about the original United States is the big letter A on this map. The letter B section is the Louisiana Purchase. We know that story. Letter C, D, and E are different parts of Florida. Letter F was the Texas and the Alamo story from earlier this week, where Texas becomes independent of Mexico, survives as an independent nation for about 9 years, and then joins the United States. Letter G section is the Oregon Territory and the Mountain Men. Very interesting story that we did yesterday. Today's lesson really is about letter H. And letter H is what we call the Mexican Cession. That word cession is spelled with a C because Mexico is going to cede that land to the United States after a war. Now, we'll talk later about section I, the Gadsden Purchase. But those things, those last four parts of this chart that you might have seen before, the Mexican Cession, the Gadsden Purchase, Alaska, and Hawaii are going to finish the idea of what we have, what possessions we have by the end of the 1800s. Remember, manifest destiny is what many Americans believe is what's going to happen for the United States. We want to have all the land from sea to shining sea. James K. Polk becomes president in 1845. If you've never heard of him, well, that's not a great surprise. But his big deal as president is finishing or completing our manifest destiny. You know, Texas wanted to join the United States as soon as they became independent from Mexico, but they couldn't about, well, raise your hand if you know what the big issue was. Yeah, that's it, slavery. Well, President Polk is in favor of slavery, and it's okay with him for Texas to join the United States as a slave state. So Texas is allowed to join in 1845. We also acquire the Oregon Territory during Polk's presidency. And today we are going to get California, although the story about how we get California is a little murky and controversial. We're going to fight a war with Mexico. You know, Texas joined the U.S. in 1845. Mexico's really, really mad. And, well, we knew that would happen. A lot of the question with Texas and Mexico is, okay, so if Texas became independent and wanted to join the U.S., where is actually the border between Texas and Mexico? There are two rivers that could be the border. The United States says the Rio Grande is the border, and Mexico says the Nueces River is the border. Well, President Polk orders General Zach Taylor to the Rio Grande River to protect the boundary. The United States says the Rio Grande River, or the Rio Grande, if you really pronounce Spanish right, is the boundary. Well, here's what happens. Here's the story. You can see where the Rio Grande River runs right along here. That's what America says is the border. Mexico says the Nueces River is the border. And this disputed area is sort of, I don't know what color that is, mauve, purplish, pinkish, whatever. That's the part we're arguing about. Now, most of the people who live there are of Mexican background. They speak Spanish. They've never been Americans. Many of the people in this area are former Americans who moved in and helped Texas gain its independence at the Alamo and San Jacinto and things like that. So that area is disputed. Well, President Polk announces to the country that the Mexican military has crossed the border into America and American blood has been shed on American soil. So he goes ahead and declares war on Mexico. What's the problem? Well, not everybody's on board with this. In fact, a lot of people are not on board. This war is very unpopular, especially with Northerners who believe it's just a trick to get more slave territory added to the country. Some people say we tricked Mexico into attacking us. Maybe Americans went across this border into Mexico, did something, stirred up the Mexicans, ran back to America, and then the Mexican army, when they chase them, then we declare war. And the slavery issue, of course, is a big, big deal. if we gain territory down here, is that going to become slave territory or not? So this war is not popular among Northern Americans, especially. In particular, there is a young congressman from Illinois. His name is Abraham Lincoln. There he is. Now, that's a picture later in his life, but at this time, he is a younger man. He is in the House of Representatives. And if you go into this nice, beautiful room with all these statues, that used to be the House of Representatives chamber, over here in this corner of the room, there is a plaque on the floor that shows where Abraham Lincoln's desk was when he was a member of the House of Representatives. By the way, if you remember Robert Fulton, the inventor of the steamboat from the other day, his statue is right here in the center of the picture. But young Abraham Lincoln, especially, is very critical of the Polk administration, saying this war was brought on just to add slave territory to the country. President Polk, you need to prove to us where American blood was shed on American soil. Well, President Polk didn't do that in a very convincing fashion. Well, America wins the war. This war goes on off and on for 3 years. Mostly it takes place in Mexico, not a lot of it here. And America wins. What do we gain by winning this war? Well, the Rio Grande River is established as the border between Mexico and the United States, and it is still the border. Now, 100 and whatever it is, 70 years later almost. A huge chunk of land out here becomes American territory. All this gray area is part of what Mexico has to give up. Now, we do pay for it, but we have the ability to make them accept our payment because we've won the war. So a big chunk of land will become American territory. Our manifest destiny is pretty much complete because California is now ours. We have all the land from sea to shining sea in the North American continent. And it's going to be a big deal that the California gold rush is going to happen very soon. Some problems we face. Certainly, America is divided on the war with Mexico. Was that a just war, or was that done sneaky in a sly way? Did we trick Mexico into attacking us? A lot of Americans not happy about this at all. And of course, what do we do about slavery in this new territory? A lot of Americans had moved into this area of Texas specifically so they could have slaves and grow cotton. Well, cotton is very hard on the soil. It depletes the nutrients very quickly. So many people believe we'll just keep moving west and keep adding new slave territory to the country. A lot of people not happy about that. And finally, how do you actually get to California? Sure, Lewis and Clark made it out to the Pacific Ocean in 1805, 1804, 1805, 1806, and the Oregon Trail has been going on for a while. But this is a very different situation to get to California. Beautiful, beautiful California. There aren't any roads. There are no canals. There are no rivers that can get us there. There's no railroad. So how do we get to California? Sure, steamships can go on rivers, but well, there aren't any rivers that make it the whole way through the continent. The roads we've been developing are all further north. Canals, well, you can't dig canals through the Rocky Mountains. That's impossible. Railroads aren't developed enough yet. And so it's a real trick. You have to get on a boat on the East Coast and sail the whole way around South America to get to California. And while clipper ships are much faster and can do this, it still takes a long time. So getting to California is a real trick. Well, the unexpected bonus is gold is discovered in California. That'll be coming up later in our story. We won't do that story today. But the California gold rush is going to change everything. Maybe even those people who were the most opposed to the war with Mexico are now going to say, oh, good, at least California is ours when all this gold is discovered. So that's another story for another day. For right now, the war with Mexico means the United States picks up a big chunk of land, not without controversy, but it does complete our manifest destiny, and maybe that's what President Polk is best known for.